Okay, so you landed an interview for a database integrator role.
That's awesome.
That's huge. And it's a job that's in super high demand right now because every business is swimming in data.
Yeah, they need someone who can make sense of it all,
So
someone to
exactly.
connect the dots and make sure all those ones and zeros are actually telling a coherent story.
Right. So that's where you come in. But before you put on your interview vest, we need to make sure you're prepped for anything they might ask.
For sure. And one of the most common questions you'll get is, can you walk me through the steps you take when integrating databases? It's
Okay.
straightforward, but it's your chance to show off.
To really show what you know.
Yeah. So instead of just listing off terms like data mapping, transformation, and loading, think about like you're a translator
Okay.
for data languages.
I like it.
Yeah, so you could say something like, first I need to understand how the data is structured in each system.
Right.
Kind of like identifying the grammar rules of each language.
So that's the data mapping part.
Exactly. Then I need to translate and clean the data so it can be understood by the target system.
Okay.
That's where data transformation comes in.
Makes sense.
Finally, I carefully transfer that clean translated data into its new home,
Data loading?
the data loading stage.
It's like taking a jumbled mess of ingredients and turning them into a perfectly organized spice rack.
That's a great way to put it.
While you're arranging those metaphorical spices, the interviewer might ask, how do you ensure data quality during integration?
Ooh, that's a big one.
That's a big one.
Huge. Data quality is paramount.
Yeah.
Think of yourself as a data detective.
Okay.
You have to make sure the information is accurate, reliable, trustworthy.
Right.
You could say, I'm meticulous about data validation. I use a combination of techniques like data profiling to identify inconsistencies and data cleansing rules to standardize formats and handle missing values.
So you're not just integrating data, you're safeguarding it.
Exactly.
And speaking of safeguarding, security is a major concern for any company.
Oh,
Dealing with sensitive information.
for sure.
They might ask, how do you ensure data security during the database integration process?
Right.
What are some key points to hit on there?
This is where you want to demonstrate that you understand best practices when it comes to data security.
Yeah.
You could say something like, security is woven into every step of my process. I always start by implementing strict access controls to ensure only authorized personnel can access the data.
Makes sense.
Then I use encryption techniques to protect the data both during transmission and while it's stored. And of course, I stay up to date on all relevant data privacy regulations to ensure compliance.
You're building a vault to protect those precious data assets.
That's right.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about your experience.
Yeah, sure.
A common question is, can you explain your experience with database design and schema mapping?
Okay.
For someone who might not be familiar, how would you break that down?
So imagine you're an architect,
Okay.
and the database is the building you're designing. Schema mapping is like creating a blueprint that shows how data from different sources will fit into the structure of your new database.
I see.
I'd say something like, in my previous role, I used my knowledge of database design principles, like normalization, to create a robust and scalable database. And when integrating data from a legacy system, I used schema mapping to ensure a smooth transition without data loss.
You're speaking their language clear, concise, and highlighting your expertise.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about a question that can really throw people off. What's the most challenging database integration project you've worked on?
It feels like a trap.
It can feel that way,
Yeah,
but it's actually a great opportunity to show off how you solve problems.
that's right.
The key is to choose a project that was genuinely tough, but where you succeeded.
Yeah,
Don't be afraid to get into the details.
right.
Describe the obstacles you faced, the decisions you made, and the actions you took to overcome those challenges.
And emphasize the positive outcome.
yes, what you learned from the experience.
Absolutely.
It's like telling a mini adventure story, but instead of slaying dragons, you're conquering data silos.
I like that. Conquering data silos.
And speaking of conquering, let's talk about how RoleCatcher can be a secret weapon in your interview prep arsenal.
Yes. RoleCatcher's AI analyzes thousands of job descriptions, including those for database integrators,
Wow,
and provides targeted feedback on your resume and interview answers.
that's awesome.
It'll help you understand what skills are most in demand and how to tailor your responses to really resonate with potential employers.
So it's like having a personal interview coach in your pocket,
Exact.
highlighting your strengths and helping you shine.
Yes.
But before we delve deeper into that, let's take a quick pause and we'll come back to tackle some more challenging interview questions.
Sounds good.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about those interview questions.
Yeah, the ones that make you really stop and think.
Right, exactly.
And speaking of complicated, let's talk about data conflicts. When you're integrating data from different sources, you're bound to run into some discrepancies.
Makes sense.
The interviewer wants to know how you'd handle that.
Sure.
They might ask, how do you handle conflicts between data from different sources during the database integration process?
It's like when two reliable maps lead you in totally different directions.
Right, so it's all about having a systematic approach.
Okay.
You could say, I begin by using data profiling to see what we're working with in each data source.
To get a clear picture.
Exactly. This helps me spot potential conflicts early on. Then I'll dig into those discrepancies, comparing data models and business rules to see why those differences exist. Sometimes this means working with data owners to get the full story and make smart decisions about data cleansing or transformation.
So detective work diplomacy and a whole lot of data expertise.
You got it.
And while we're talking about expertise, an interviewer might ask, can you describe your experience with data modeling and data warehousing?
For sure. This is your time to really showcase your skills. You can say, data modeling is like creating the blueprint for how data will be structured and organized within a database.
Okay.
While data warehousing is about building that central hub where data from multiple sources can be analyzed for insights.
I see.
You could even give an example like, in my last role, I developed a data model for a sales data warehouse that let us analyze sales trends by region and product.
Giving your sales team a real advantage.
Exactly.
You're not just managing data, you're giving the entire organization the power to use it.
Absolutely.
That's huge. Okay, ready for another one?
Hit me.
Interviewers love to ask about how you stay current in the field.
It's a fast-moving field.
Yeah.
You got to stay on top of it all.
Exactly. So they might ask, how do you stay up to date with emerging database technologies and trends?
Right. Well, you want to show them you're really plugged into the data community.
Yeah.
Talk about the publications, the blogs, the podcasts you follow.
Even online forums.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Mention any conferences or workshops you've been to or certifications you're working on.
Show them you're passionate about learning.
Yeah, it's all about continuous improvement.
Makes sense. Speaking of new stuff, let's talk about cloud-based databases.
Sure.
They're everywhere now.
Yeah, they're becoming the norm.
So be ready to answer. Can you explain your experience with cloud-based databases and integration?
Right, and this is where it can get tricky if you've mostly worked with on-premise systems.
I bet.
But just be honest.
Okay.
Highlight how eager you are to learn.
That's key.
Mention anything you know about platforms like AWS Azure or Google Cloud.
Even a basic understanding shows you're thinking ahead.
Exactly.
It's like saying, I'm signed up for that cloud computing crash course.
I love that analogy.
And while we're on the topic of tools and resources, let's loop back to RoleCatcher.
Oh, yeah. RoleCatcher can be a game changer when you're prepping for interviews.
For sure.
Imagine this. A platform that analyzes job descriptions for Database Integrator roles and tells you exactly what skills and experience are most important.
Wow.
That's RoleCatcher.
That's incredible.
It helps you tailor your resume and your interview answers, so you're highlighting the qualifications employers really want.
It's like having a secret decoder for job descriptions.
I like it.
But it's not just about buzzwords, right?
Absolutely not. RoleCatcher does way more than that.
Okay.
It also gives you AI-powered feedback on your interview answers,
Oh, wow.
so you can practice answering those tough questions we talked about.
That's so helpful.
And you get personalized suggestions on how to improve.
Like having a personal speech coach.
Exactly. It can really boost your confidence.
We've covered a lot of ground, but there's one last important piece of interview prep we need to discuss.
Okay.
So when we come back, we'll explore how to make a killer last impression and seal the deal.
Sounds good.
We're back. Okay, so we've talked about technical skills, problem solving, staying up to date.
Even how RoleCatcher can give you a leg up.
Right, but now let's talk about you.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, your passion and your enthusiasm are just as important. So when they ask, why are you interested in this role? Or what are your career goals?
Right.
Be ready to really sell it.
This is where you bring it all together.
Yes.
Your skills,
Yeah.
your experience, your goals.
Don't be afraid to get personal and share what really excites you about this field.
Totally. And don't forget about asking good questions at the end of the interview.
It shows you're really thinking about the role.
For sure. What are some questions that could impress a potential employer?
You could ask about their data strategy, their approach to data governance, even specific technologies they're using,
Yeah.
like what are some of your biggest data integration challenges? Or how do you see data driving innovation here?
Those are great. It shows you're ready to make a real difference.
Exactly.
Before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom for our listeners who are about to head into that interview room?
Just remember, preparation builds confidence.
It's true.
So review your notes, practice your answers, and let your personality shine through.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And remember, the interview goes both ways.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about finding the right fit for you, too.
Trust your gut, ask good questions, and don't be afraid to go for it.
Yes. Go out there with your newfound knowledge, your interview skills, and all that confidence.
You got this.
We're rooting for you every step of the way.
Absolutely.
And that's a wrap on another deep dive.
Until next time.